On a late winter afternoon, a young woman left her workplace in a small northern city in Japan and was never seen again. This is the true, unsolved disappearance case of Hitomi Masuyama. The 19th of February 1994 was an eventful day for the 21-year-old Hitomi. It was her last day working at her local dental clinic, so work colleagues had given her flowers and presents as a farewell gift. She was getting married in 3 weeks after all, so everyone was very happy for her and spirits were high. But despite this, it was the same as every other day. Well, almost the same. During the afternoon, a young woman, who didn't leave a name, had called the dentist's reception and asked to speak to Hitomi. The receptionist who received the call passed the phone to Hitomi and noted how unsettled she was while talking. The fun, warm aura she had given off while receiving presents was gone, and now she looked concerned, depressed, and serious. According to the receptionist, it didn't seem like they were friends having a pleasant chat. While talking, Hitomi repeatedly looked at the clock hanging on the wall, and while the receptionist couldn't hear what the unknown woman was saying, it seemed like they were talking about organizing a meeting for that very day. After hanging up, Hitomi didn't say anything about it and continued on her day like normal, but seemed to be upset by something. With heartfelt goodbyes and congratulations on her marriage from her colleagues, Hitomi left at 1:10 p.m. that day to return home. Unfortunately, she never made it, and no one has seen her since. It was as if she disappeared into thin air. After being reported missing by her family, Fukushima police began a search around the local areas of Haramachi City, the place where she worked and lived. On the next day, the 20th of February 1994, Hitomi's car, a black Suzuki Alto Works, was seen locked and parked in a small vacant lot behind a convenience store less than 1 kilometer away from the dental clinic and roughly 2 kilometers away from her home. According to police and family members, all of Hitomi's belongings remained in the car, including her shoulder bag with money and ID cards, the presents and flowers she received from colleagues the previous day, her ink stamp which was used in Japan instead of signatures, her winter jacket, and most notable of all, her precious engagement ring. Since there was no evidence of a struggle found at the scene or witnesses that saw where she went, the circumstances surrounding her movements remain a mystery. Such a thing was extremely uncharacteristic for Hitomi. She was very happy, positive, caring, and family-orientated, and as previously mentioned, she was just a few weeks away from marrying the man that she loved and was very excited about it. Because of this and the items left behind, the family strongly suspected that foul play was involved. Some investigators also thought that this was very likely, especially when they learned from the family that there had been a number of strange incidents in Hitomi's life right up until the disappearance. Upon announcing her engagement a few weeks prior to her vanishing, Hitomi's home, where she had lived with her parents and younger sister, had been receiving silent calls from an unknown person. These strange phone calls would come every night at around 12 a.m., but not a single word was ever said by the caller when someone picked up. When Hitomi and her fiancé exchanged engagement gifts and began preparing for the wedding, the phone calls intensified, with the unknown person calling every hour from midnight to 4 a.m., causing much anxiety for the family. Most suspicious of all, according to Hitomi's father, The phone calls completely stopped the same day that she went missing, even before a public announcement of the disappearance had taken place. Furthermore, Hitomi's car had also been previously vandalized by an unknown person. Someone had scratched deep marks on the side of it and had written insulting words. Seen here in this mock-up image of exactly what was on Hitomi's car, the mystery person wrote "ugly" and "idiot," among other slanderous, hateful things. Like the silent phone calls, this was also done after Hitomi announced her engagement, and many crime experts who have commented on these acts say that it's likely that the same person is responsible and that they held a strong grudge against Hitomi. When police began their investigation, they conducted interviews of neighbors, family members, colleagues, friends, and of random people living nearby. When Hitomi's fiancé was interviewed, he displayed some rather odd behavior quite unbecoming of a man whose partner had gone missing right before a wedding. While initially he seemed to show worry, he quickly became cold and uninterested in finding Hitomi or helping out with the investigation. While family members and friends were saddened by the news and desperately trying to find information via posters and media appearances, the fiancé tried to get on with his life as if nothing happened. And in a staggering interview with a TV news show, he said, and I quote, "There is no reason to look for her, and I think she went missing willingly." This surprising reaction caused a great amount of suspicion to fall on the fiancé, and this is when more information came out about his life. First of all, it was discovered that he'd been cheating on Hitomi with another woman. The fiancé actually dated this other woman for a long time before breaking up with her and starting a relationship with Hitomi. But even after the breakup, it seemed that the fiancé had a secret on and off relationship with her. Hitomi eventually discovered that something was going on though, because she was often contacted by the former girlfriend, who was trying to break up the couple and stop the engagement. In fact, the woman often called up the dental clinic where Hitomi worked at, and she was said by colleagues to have a similar voice to the one that was heard on the day of the disappearance. But one of the most important things surrounding the fiancé and this other woman was Hitomi's notebook. Investigators found a diary-like notebook inside of Hitomi's car, where she wrote down important things each day. In the entry on the 25th of January, less than a month before the disappearance, police found a cryptic message. "I got a phone call from an office lady called Name Redacted during the afternoon break. Looks like he is seeing someone else. But it didn't really surprise me. My intuition was correct. He said that he is being harassed by her. He said he doesn't know that kind of woman. I will believe him." While somewhat difficult to understand because we don't know the full context, we can see that Hitomi was in contact with the woman that the fiancé was seeing, and that although she was extremely happy to get married to the person she loved, things were not so good behind the scenes. But the strangest, and perhaps creepiest thing to come out of the case would happen almost a year after the disappearance on the 4th of January 1995, when Hitomi's family received a strange phone call.
Hi, Masuyamaです。もしもし、はい、お姉ちゃんだよ。はい、お姉ちゃん。誰ですか？お姉ちゃんだよ。どちら様ですか？ひとみです。は？
According to the family, the voice was nothing like Hitomi's. In fact, it sounds like a woman in her 50s or 60s rather than someone in her early 20s. The family and investigators also stated that the woman spoke with a local Fukushima accent. The call was traced by police to a public telephone box within the same postcode as Hitomi's family, so it must have come from someone who lived very close by. What is strange about the call is that the unknown caller seemed to know Hitomi's younger sister. The fact that she said, "It's your older sister," shows that the caller knew that she was speaking to Hitomi's sister and not her mother. Furthermore, in a staggering statement, the sister stated that she recognized the voice. According to her, it sounded exactly like a voice she often heard while working at a family-run restaurant. This restaurant wasn't some ordinary restaurant though. It was a restaurant run by the fiancé and his family. Yes, Hitomi and her sister both helped out at the fiancé's family-run business near their home. But of course, since the disappearance, they no longer went there. However, police never looked into this possible lead. In fact, the police didn't really conduct much of an investigation at all, and were criticized heavily for their half-hearted approach to everything surrounding the vanishing of Hitomi. The fact that the fiancé and this other woman were never investigated thoroughly is shocking after reading about the case, but there is still more to come. There are quite a few pieces of information that point to the fiancé and his other lover being somehow involved in the disappearance. But before I go into some theories, let's eliminate one possibility, that Hitomi disappeared via her own volition. The family and even police think that this is very unlikely, and they gave a few reasons for why they think so. First of all, Hitomi had a full schedule of things to do the day of her disappearance, right up until the evening. After leaving work, she was going to visit her grandfather, who was in hospital. After that, she was going to go to the fiancé's restaurant to help out, and there had been plans to organize some wedding tasks. Police thought that a person who was planning to disappear wouldn't go to all the trouble of organizing such things. Another thing that stuck out to police was the car. It would have been difficult for her to vanish without a trace if she used a bus or a train to leave the area, especially in a small city where she lived. Many people who disappear in Japan do so with a car to avoid being detected, so to leave the car very close to her workplace is rather suspicious. The police were also puzzled as to why Hitomi's jacket and purse were left behind. It was early February in northern Japan when she disappeared, meaning that it would have been very cold if she just started walking without it. Leaving her purse behind would also mean that she wouldn't have any access to money or other essential things like health insurance or a driving license, which are vital for people who want to start a new life somewhere else. Family members also said that nothing was amiss at home, and none of Hitomi's possessions like clothes or other essentials were missing. And finally, as we know, Hitomi was 3 weeks away from getting married. While the relationship had its flaws, she was truly in love with her fiancé and was extremely excited for the marriage. For weeks before the disappearance, she was working tirelessly to prepare for it. She had dress fittings, was organizing what food she wanted guests to have, spent hours writing guest invitations the day before she vanished. Police believe that someone wouldn't have worked so hard for something if they were going to disappear. Even if the person was trying to act natural and cover up their plans, it seemed like, for Hitomi, this wasn't the case, especially because of how close she was with her family and friends, and because she had never displayed any willingness to completely abandon and cut ties with them. So if she didn't disappear willingly, how did Hitomi simply vanish without a trace? Well, let's go back to the major theory we have already touched on, the fiancé and his secret lover. There are still a few pieces of information yet to discuss about this other woman. One is the widely believed and somewhat credible rumor that she had strong links to organized crime in the city. Her father was a high-ranking member of a particular crime group that resides in the city that Hitomi lived in. And while it seems unlikely that this woman could overpower Hitomi alone without a struggle or evidence, it would be easy for professional criminals to accomplish such a feat. Maybe the phone call on the day of the disappearance was used to lure Hitomi to a location where she could be ambushed. Maybe Hitomi's resilience against all the silent phone calls and damage to her car made the woman believe that the only way to stop the marriage was to get rid of Hitomi permanently. But most shocking of all was that just 4 months after Hitomi's disappearance, the fiancé supposedly got engaged to this other woman. And 11 months from the disappearance, they were said to have a child together. Yes, less than a year after Hitomi went missing, her fiancé got married and had a child with this secret lover who was seemingly trying to break the couple apart. While there is no concrete evidence to point them specifically to the crime, and much of what we know is conjecture and speculation, what happened between the fiancé and this other woman is extremely suspicious, and it is a shame that the police never investigated the possible leads. Speaking of the police, you may be wondering why they didn't put much of an effort into finding Hitomi. Well, again, there is no real evidence and only speculation to work with on this front. But as I already stated, the father of the other woman was a high-ranking gangster in a group that had a large presence in the area, Fukushima. While this location is quite rural and small, you have all probably heard of it because of the disaster that happened in the 2011 earthquake. Well, even before that terrible event, there were many protests in the area over the presence of the power plant. Police often had their hands full dealing with such protests, and when in a difficult situation such as that, criminal organizations can capitalize on the opportunity. Locals in the area suspect that gangs agreed not to cause too much of a trouble for the police if police turned a blind eye to some of their crimes. And some suspect that this is what happened with Hitomi's disappearance. Again, this is just speculation and there is no proof for it, but the lack of investigations into the fiancé and his secret lover have caused a lot of people to question what the police were doing. The police did conduct some questioning though. In the first 5 years of the investigation, they questioned up to 27,000 people and received up to 110 pieces of information, but ultimately, absolutely nothing has been found to this very day and the case remains cold. The Fukushima Prefectural Police Force maintain a page on their website detailing the case, as well as some information about Hitomi at the time of her disappearance. But now, almost 30 years since Hitomi vanished, it seems unlikely that the incident will be resolved unless someone comes forward with credible information that could point investigators in the right direction. Thank you for watching my 16th YouTube video. If you liked it, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you wish to see more. This case got deeper and deeper the more I researched it, so apologies if the structure is a little all over the place. I cannot believe the police seem to stand by and do nothing when so much information can point to a particular person. While it's true that no concrete evidence can point to this other woman that the fiancé was seeing, the diary entry, the phone calls, and the cold attitude of the fiancé during the investigation really make one wonder if something was going on. Anyway, that's enough from me. Until next time, goodbye.